And we are here, Smallstep and Indent. I'm just going to give the stream a second to kind of catch up, and it'll probably start playing here pretty quick. So give it just a moment. There we are. All right. So today we are going to show you how to use Smallstep to SSH into your production servers. Joining us today is Indent, a company that solves authorization. Now that the stream is set up and everything is good, we'll just get right underway. So please put any questions you may have for us in the chat as they come up. We'll kind of go through them as needed. I think we're all good from my side. Take it away, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm a computerist at Smallstep. I'm here with our guests, the Indent team, and I'll let you introduce yourself, actually.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Fuad. I'm one of the co-founders at Indent and super excited to show you how to manage temporary access with SSH.
All right. Before we get into your demo, let's talk about what SSH is. The Secure Shell Protocol, or SSH, is a cryptographic network protocol used to secure and encrypt communication between two computers over an unsecured network. And what do we use it for? Lots of stuff. Secure Shell is used for secure remote access to a computer or server. Often it's used to securely log into remote machines, execute commands for files, or just access your network. It's commonly used by system administrators, developers, and other IT professionals. That's great, but SSH isn't perfect. The user experience of SSH is rough. Onboarding new users is slow and manual. Connecting to new hosts produces confusing security warnings, which often are just left ignored. And then you're left with new credentials that you have to manage and little guidance on how to do. Operating SSH at scale is a disaster. Key approval and distribution is a waste of time. Host names can't be reused. Homegrown tools often scatter key material across your fleet, and that then needs to be cleaned up later, if you remember, when you have to offboard new users. SSH can also encourage bad security practices. Rekeying is hard, so it's often left undone. And users are exposed to key material and encouraged to reuse those keys across devices. They're trusted permanently, and so mistakes are fail open. So how can we make it better? You can use SSH certificates instead. SSH certificate authentication makes SSH easier, the use of the Smallstep tooling, which can help, and will make it easier to operate, more secure. Remember, asymmetric cryptography is our friend. So hopefully you're on the same page and you're ready to start using SSH certificates. And you probably also want something that's easy to use. So you can DIY your own authority, or you can start by signing up for a free 30-day trial on smallstep.com. We'll post the link quickly in the chat. Smallstep makes it easier for you to manage your users by connecting your identity provider so you can sync users and groups automatically into your Smallstep environment. You'll need to connect your IDP to use the indent, which means using our paid product, Smallstep SSH Professional. But don't worry, the added magic is totally worth it, which you'll see shortly in Fuad's demo. So I'm going to leave it up to you now.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for that introduction to SSH and how Smallstep fits in. Just to piggyback on that concept of managing temporary credentials and temporary access, the way we think about it is kind of taking it, not just the authentication and connection layer, but then extending it to the ability to even kind of make those changes, having temporary access to the servers themselves. And before I get into the demo, I'll show you a super quick introduction about how Indent fits in. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Great. So you can think of Indent as helping companies make critical decisions faster and more secure, where a lot of times getting access can take days. You ping someone and have to reping them, or there's a back and forth that ends up happening. And ultimately, it all comes down to these unreliable approvals. With Indent, the goal is to simplify the requesting access experience. So any user can just say, I need access, let's say, to SSH within Smallstep. And then based on that and some sort of policy that routes to a reviewer to approve, they can get on-demand access to those resources, whether they're cloud infrastructure, databases, using Smallstep to manage the data plane and then connectivity, and then having Indent manage approvals around it. And you can think of this evolution from the kind of earliest days where everything is open and everyone has persistent access to any system they want, and moving to a model where things are identity-based. You're using certificates to manage the connectivity using Smallstep's tooling, and then ultimately using Indent on top of that to manage temporary access for those systems. Indent can capture the who, what, and why of an access request, and then pass it through our policy engine before routing to, let's say, an Okta integration to provision access within Smallstep. Primary use cases are around engineering and production access, but we see a lot of teams who will take this approval process and bring it across their company. And now with that, let's focus just on the engineering use case and go through a live demo. Over here, I have our Okta app set up. I went through the Smallstep docs to follow creating an Okta app and setting up provisioning. Here, we're pushing groups for Smallstep SSH and Smallstep sudo access. And if I go over to Smallstep, I can see that those groups were pushed in and we granted them access to mprod, which in this case contains our little micropod instance. Over in Indent, let me actually first show what the request flow looks like. I can say I need access to Smallstep SSH, maybe to view production, and I need it for the next 6 hours. But since I already submitted a petition, I already can see this request had been granted. Now I can head over to the command line and type step SSH hosts. And now we'll see I have access to this microprod instance. I can type SSH flood at microprod. And now using Smallstep, it'll connect me via SSH into that instance. So now if let's say we had something running, I could go view the logs. If we had Rails console or a database, I could connect to that. The goal here is really to provide not just temporary access for authentication and connectivity, but extending that to the authorization layer as well. So with that, I think that concludes our demo, and I'll maybe open it up to any questions, or Sean, if you had anything that you wanted to add.
That was great. That was so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, one thing, Indent is so much more than just SSH, right? Like Smallstep is a part of really what Indent can do. Can you tell us a little bit more about all of the things that Indent can do? SSH would just be part of it. Indent is a much bigger product.
Sure, yeah, of course. So you can think of Indent being useful anytime you need to either require some sort of policy to be checked or approvals to be required. And a lot of times what we see teams run into is, let's say it's 2 a.m. and let's just take the engineering use case. It's 2 a.m. and someone gets paged in the middle of the night and you need emergency SSH access into production, or you need to go view the logs in your monitoring system or observability system, or maybe you just need to go purge something in the cache in Cloudflare. Each of those situations where there's very sensitive privileged access that's required to perform some sort of action, Indent can act as a layer in between. First step is 2FA or two-factor authentication, making sure that people are who they say they are. But the next layer of that is having someone else also approve that. It could be a peer, it could be automatically approved based on an on-call status. And that's really how we see Indent fitting in across teams' workflows, is finding what are the existing tools that kind of act as systems of record, whether it's on-call or maybe it's a group, and fitting into those workflows as frictionlessly as possible. So our goal is to not just make it easier and more secure to get that access, but really kind of bring things under control where you can have a little bit more certainty when you're accessing, whether it's production and sensitive materials there, or it's a mailing list and finance information in your shared inboxes, making that kind of end-to-end kind of temporary role-based access as simple as possible.
That's awesome. And I know Smallstep has a self-service option, so you can go get started at any time with Smallstep. And like Sean mentioned, we have a 30-day free trial as well. So start using that, start pulling down the IDP and actually doing SSH the right way with SSH certificates. How about Indent? What's your product like?
Yeah, we have a very similar philosophy, which is that good security should be as accessible to as many people as possible. And so we also have a free to get started plan. There's no limit on integrations. You can just start setting things up, making sure that it works for your use case. And as you start productionizing it, using it more, adding more complexity to your configuration, then it makes sense to, as we found, typically to find some path where it's generating audit evidence for compliance reports, or it's just kind of taking on some more complex use cases. Some of our customers started with production access and ended up using our APIs to build features into their own products. So there's a pretty broad range of what people can do with Indent, but it's free to get started. You can just go to indent.com/setup or just indent.com and click the big blue button, and you can go ahead and start setting up Smallstep with Indent and any other systems in your stack.
Awesome. I don't have any more questions. Sean, how about you?
No.
Good to go. It's so simple, right? Everyone should use SSH certificates and
Absolutely.
then use Indent on top of it, really, just to get that on-demand access. And again, like making sure that your environments, your production environments, are really just that secure. It's a win-win situation. So thank you, Indent, for joining us today and making it even easier to use SSH certificates. It's been really awesome solving not only authentication, but also authorization alongside you. Thank you to everyone who attended this webinar. If you're watching on YouTube afterwards, thank you for watching this. And I hope that you love this integration as much as we do. We'll be sending out an email after this webinar with more links and the links that we mentioned as well, so you can get started right away within our SaaS products using this integration. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any further questions about this. We both have places on our website where you can come and ask us about any of the things that we have going on SSH. We have more than just SSH at Smallstep. We also have a product called Certificate Manager that you can do even more with certificates. So don't hesitate to talk with us. And thank you all again so much for making this a reality.
Thank you.